What if our reality is just a glitch in the matrix? Look at this. The odds of something like this happening are literally 1 in a billion. And yet, it's completely documented. Today, we are breaking down 10 historical coincidences that sound like absolute fiction. You'll find out how a book predicted the sinking of the Titanic 14 years before it happened, and how twin brothers lived identical lives without ever meeting. Make sure to watch until the very end, because our number one spot pretty much proves that history is being written by a screenwriter. But let's start with a chilling story from the 20th century. June 1941. Soviet archaeologists are excavating the tomb of the legendary warlord Tamerlane. The local elders beg them to stop, showing them an ancient inscription. It read, "Whosoever opens this tomb shall unleash an invader blacker than I." The archaeologists laugh it off and open the casket on June 20th. Exactly 2 days later, on June 22nd, Nazi Germany invades the Soviet Union. Coincidence? Maybe. But it gets weirder. In November 1942, Stalin orders Tamerlane's remains to be returned to his tomb with full honors. Just days later, the Soviet army launches a massive counteroffensive at Stalingrad, turning the tide of World War II. Mathematicians call it luck, but what's coming next makes no logical sense. Bermuda, 1974. A 17-year-old boy named Neville Eben is riding his moped down a street when he's struck and killed by a taxi. A total tragedy. Exactly 1 year later, his younger brother turns 17. He is riding the exact same moped down the exact same street when he is also struck and killed by a taxi. But buckle up, because here's the kicker. It was the exact same taxi, driven by the exact same driver. And it was carrying the exact same passenger from the year before. It's like someone hit replay on a video game script. By the way, if you love historical mysteries like this, subscribe to the channel right now. We dig up stories like this every single day so you don't miss out. In 1838, legendary horror writer Edgar Allan Poe publishes a bizarre novel. The story follows 4 shipwreck survivors trapped on a lifeboat with no food. To survive, 3 of them kill and eat the 4th. Poe gives the victim a completely random name, Richard Parker. The book is widely dismissed as pure fiction. Fast forward 46 years later. Real life. An English yacht sinks, leaving 4 survivors stranded at sea. Driven by starvation, 3 of them decide to sacrifice the youngest cabin boy. When they were rescued, the story made international headlines. The cabin boy's name? Richard Parker. Poe couldn't have known him. The boy wasn't even born when the book was written. But this is nothing compared to the eerie timeline waiting for us at number 3. In the 1920s, American actor Claude Richman was traveling by train through Europe. To pass the time, he stopped at a local bookstore and bought a random worn-out book of short stories. He opened the front cover and froze. Written on the inside page was his own name and the address of his childhood orphanage. It was his personal book, the one he had lost as a child thousands of miles away. It had traveled the world for over 20 years, only to find its way back into his hands on a random train. Lost objects have a way of returning. But what happens when an entire destiny repeats itself? This story completely broke the brains of psychologists worldwide. 2 identical twin brothers were separated at birth and adopted by different families. They knew absolutely nothing about each other until they finally reunited at age 39. The list of coincidences was terrifying. Both adoptive families, without knowing, named the boys James. Both grew up to become police officers. Both married a woman named Linda, got divorced, and married a second time to a woman named Betty. They both had sons. One named his boy James Allen, and the other named his boy James Allan. They even took vacations at the exact same beach in Florida and drove the exact same model of car. Is that genetics? Or a rigid simulation code? In 1898, 14 years before the Titanic sank, an author named Morgan Robertson wrote a novella called Futility. The book describes a massive British luxury liner marketed as unsinkable. In the month of April, it sets out on its maiden voyage across the Atlantic, hits an iceberg, and sinks. Most of the passengers die because there aren't enough lifeboats. Let's look at the numbers. The ship in the book was 800 feet long. The Titanic was 882. The fictional ship hit the iceberg at 25 knots. The Titanic hit it at 22.5. And the most chilling part? Robertson named his fictional ship the Titan. It wasn't a book. It was a blueprint for disaster. But our top 3 cases take things to a whole new level. World War I claimed millions of lives. The very first British soldier killed in action was John Parr in 1914. He was buried in a small military cemetery in Belgium. The war dragged on for 4 brutal years. The absolute last British soldier killed was George Ellison. He was fatally shot just 90 minutes before the armistice was signed in 1918. He was buried in the exact same cemetery. Years later, historians visited the graveyard and made a shocking discovery. The graves of the first and last soldiers are facing each other, located just 20 feet apart. No one planned this. Their families didn't know each other. Out of millions of graves across Europe, the war ended exactly where it began. King Umberto I of Italy walked into a small restaurant in the town of Monza. When the owner came out to greet him, the king gasped. The restaurant owner looked identical to him. Same face, same height, same mannerisms. They started talking and realized their lives were a perfect mirror. Both were born on March 14, 1844, in the exact same town. The owner's name was also Umberto. They both married on the exact same day to women both named Margarita. And the restaurant opened on the very day of the king's coronation. Fascinated, the king invited his twin to a royal event the next day. But the owner never showed up. That morning, he was accidentally killed by a stray gunshot. As the king expressed his shock, a man rushed out from the crowd and assassinated the king. They died on the same day. In 1893, Henry Ziegland broke up with his girlfriend. Heartbroken, she took her own life. Her brother, consumed by rage, tracked Henry down, shot him, and then turned the gun on himself. But Henry survived. The bullet had only grazed his face and ended up wedged deep inside a massive tree behind him. 20 years later, Henry decided to cut that same tree down. Because it was too large, he used dynamite to blow it up. The explosion blasted the tree into pieces. The force of the blast dislodged the 20-year-old bullet, shooting it straight into Henry's head, killing him instantly. The bullet waited 2 decades to finish the job. But our number 1 spot is even harder to believe. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams were the founding fathers of the United States, the minds behind the Declaration of Independence. Throughout their lives, they went from close friends to bitter political enemies, and back to friends again. Then came July 4th, 1826. The United States was celebrating exactly 50 years of independence. On that very day, John Adams was on his deathbed at 90 years old. His final words were, "Thomas Jefferson survives." But Adams was wrong. He had no way of knowing that Jefferson had passed away just a few hours earlier on that exact same day. The 2 primary authors of American freedom died hours apart on the 50th anniversary of their greatest achievement. The mathematical odds are non-existent. It's as if history itself waited for that exact date. Which of these coincidences blew your mind the most? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to see what you think. It really makes you wonder if our world is much more structured than we realize, and that maybe coincidences don't exist at all. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like. It helps the channel immensely. And make sure to click on the videos appearing on your screen right now for even more historical mysteries. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.